Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, let's try to do I need a baton? Maybe so we can. This, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you. On this 26th day of May 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 4 entitled Transcendental Knowledge, text 8 on page 192. Okay. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma sangstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Guru, you want to start? 8, text number 8 of 4 chapters, page 192. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Either of you want to chant? Not yet. Can you chant? If you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to. Ladies? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Anyone online? Guess not. Okay. All right, I'll just read the word by words. Paritranaya, for the deliverance, sadhunam, of the devotees, vinashaya, for the annihilation, cha, and dushkritam, of the miscreants, dharma, principles of religion, sangstapana arthaya, to reestablish, sambhavami, I do appear, yuge, millennium, yuge, after millennium. For Prabhupada, the word millennium is, he says, is yuga, but it's a long period of time, basically. Okay, translation. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. Purport. According to the Bhagavad Gita, a sadhu or holy man is a man in Krishna consciousness. A person may appear to be irreligious, but if he has the qualifications of Krishna consciousness wholly and fully, he is to be understood to be a sadhu. And dushkritam applies to those who do not care for Krishna consciousness. Such miscreants or dushkritam are described as foolish and than the lowest of mankind, even though they may be decorated with mundane education. Whereas a person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as a sadhu, even though such a person may be neither learned nor well-cultured. As far as the atheistic are concerned, it is not necessary for the Supreme Lord to appear as he is to destroy them, as he did with the demons Ravana and Kamsa. The Lord has many agents who are quite competent to vanquish demons, but the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees, who are always harassed by the demoniac. The demon harasses the devotee, even though the latter may happen to be his kin. Although Prahlad Maharaj was the son of Hiranyakashipu, he was nonetheless persecuted by his father. Although Devaki, the mother of Krishna, was the sister of Kamsa, she and her husband Vasudeva were persecuted only because Krishna was to be born of them.
So Lord Krishna appeared primarily to deliver Devaki rather than kill Kamsa, but both were performed simultaneously. Therefore it is said here that to deliver the devotee and vanquish the demon miscreants, the Lord appears in different incarnations. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraj, the following verses, Madhya 20, 263 to 264, summarize these principles of incarnation. Srishti heturye murti prapanche avatare, se Ishvara murti avatar nama dhare, mayatita paravyome sabara abastan, vishve avatari dhare avatara nam. The avatar, or incarnation of Godhead, descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation, and the particular form of the personality of Godhead who so descends is called an incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. When they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. Close quote. There are various kinds of avatars, such as Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, Shaktavesha avatars, Manvantara avatars, and Yuga avatars, all appearing on schedule all over the universe. But Lord Krishna is the primeval Lord, the fountainhead of all avatars. Lord Sri Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of the pure devotees, who are very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastimes. Therefore, the prime purpose of the Krishna avatar is to satisfy his unalloyed devotees. The Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the incarnation in the age of Kali is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread the worship of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting of the holy names, and spread Krishna consciousness throughout India. He predicted that this culture of Sankirtan would be broadcast all over the world, from town to town and village to village. Lord Chaitanya, as the incarnation of Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is described secretly, but not directly, in the confidential parts of the revealed scriptures, such as the Upanishads, Mahabharata, and Bhagavatam. The devotees of Lord Krishna are very much attracted to the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. This avatar of the Lord does not kill the miscreants, but delivers them by his causeless mercy. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, this disciplic succession. So this is the second of these two famous verses, 7 and 8, where Krishna explains why he comes and when he comes. And Paratanaya Sadhunam, especially to protect the devotees, to enliven the devotees. At the end of the 5 chapters of the Rasa Lila in the 10th canto, Krishna says, in the end, I forget the Sanskrit again, but what he's saying there is that I appear in order to enact my pastimes in Vrindavan, in order to renew the memory, so my devotees will have the subject matter to hear and chant, remember by. So that's another way in which he enlivens and protects his devotees, by helping them to, enlivening them in their devotional service. And of course, Lord Chaitanya, as Krishna, he is providing them, just like I was seeing, I don't know if you saw it on YouTube, but it was amazing, that gathering in Orlando, the Sadhu Sangha. Wow, a lot of devotees, and the chanting was very, very wonderful. Yeah, it's worth checking it out. It was the biggest one by far. I think 4,000 devotees came. Imagine, from all over the world. And this was basically their chanting. They're chanting Hare Krishna. That's what's going on. And you can see how enlivening it is. I saw one that said, who was it? One of the leaders, they were saying after days of chanting, you're really feeling enlivened, and in general, even between the chanting sessions, you feel it's very, very enlivening. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to go to one of those. But So here, this idea of like avatar. Avatar literally means in Sanskrit one who descends. And there, as Prabhupada mentions in this purport, there's different kinds of avatars. Krishna himself is, by rights, not an avatar. He's avatari. He's the source of all avatars, although he does some kind of descend from the spiritual world and appear here. But the Leela avatars, for instance, we're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we just passed through several avatars, and the Lord Nrsingadev is described at the end of in the 7th canto, and he was a special avatar. Krishna appears as half man, half lion, you know, in order to annihilate the demon who was tormenting his devotee, Prahlad. That's the main reason. But he also has, I mean, I remember in Mayapur, you know, Mayapur is in the middle of Bengal, and there, when they were first building the place, and this, I think this was after Prabhupada disappeared, there was a lot of opposition from local Muslims and things like that. And then one day there was a raid where some dacoits invaded the place. They had heard a rumor that the murti of Radharani that was on the altar was pure gold. And so they wanted to steal that, which they did. But they were throwing bombs, you know, little homemade bombs and everything. And this was going on right in my... I wasn't there, but I heard about it. And devotees came out, and I don't know if Jayapataka Maharaj had his rifle at that point, but at one point he killed a big snake, huge cobra. I heard about this because there's a lot of snakes in Mayapur, you know. And so this cobra had gotten into the dorms, and then he got out, you know, and he was in the field. So he went out into the field, and the devotees were all lined up, you know, on the balcony of the long building, and you know, watching him. And he was going around, and they saw the snake going behind him in the field, and they're calling, "Watch out, watch out, watch out." And he turned around just at the last second, and there, you know how the cobras, they get up and they're ready to strike it. Boom, he knocked that.
Who was that?
Jayapataka Maharaj. So this sometimes happens. But Lord Chaitanya appeared, and he was didn't reveal himself to be Krishna. You know, later on he did, but at first it wasn't so obvious. And because he was in the mood of the devotee of Krishna. This is the thing. Lord Chaitanya is a special avatar because he appears not as, you know, the Supreme Personality of Godhead with all these powers and everything, but as actually a wonderful devotee. You know, he grew up, and he was showing some, you know, miraculous things, but not like the things that usually God shows right away. But he was perfect for this age because in the Vedic age, you know, I mean, I couldn't sit, none of us could chant the Vedic mantras. We're not qualified. You know, and so you can't become qualified. You're born as a Shudra, you're a Shudra. So Lord Chaitanya said, no hard and fast rules. Nam akadi bahudani dasarva shaktis. Tatra pitani yamitak smaranena kalaha. Eta drushita vakripa bhagavan mamapi durdaivam idasamihajaninanuraga. Now in this verse from his Shikshastika, these are 8 very important verses of instruction on the holy name. The chanting of the holy name, why chant the holy name, what you should pray for as you're chanting, and all they did, very important. The practice and the goal. So in this verse, he takes the position of someone who doesn't have any attraction for chanting, you see. But he's saying, you have so many names, Krishna, Govinda, and Keshava too. Your names have no end, and in each of them you have invested your potencies, leaving none out. Whenever we want, we can chant them without the slightest restriction of time or of place. O Lord, who can fathom your infinite grace? But I am so wretched, devoid of all shame, that I haven't developed a taste for your name. Now this is God himself, of course he has a taste. But he's taken the position of someone. So how do we develop the taste? Next verse. This verse was supposed to string around our neck and always for constant remembrance. This is how you can advance in the chanting. So he says, Trinada bisunichena tora rapi sahishnana hamanina manadena kirtaniya sadaharihi. More humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, To think all praise belongs to others, none belongs to me. Such qualities attract the Lord to bless one with the power to chant His name incessantly until the final hour. Now, why should we want to chant until the final hour? That's the whole point. Is that the most prominent thought that you have when you finally leave this body, and nobody in this room is going to die. Nobody on this planet is going to die. No insect is going to die. Nobody dies. You just change your body. The soul is immortal. Nijayate miyate vakadacha nayamuda. For the soul is never birth or death at any time. So this is an essential first understanding. And in one sense it's so super enlivening. None of us are going to die. But in the other, it gives us a certain responsibility. That if we want to achieve the goal, then we have to end the process of birth and death, which has been going on since millions of years. We forgot all those other bodies that we have. We're sitting here on the shore, practically on the shore of the Pacific Ocean, which is filled with all kinds of fish and everything. There may be a reason for that. We had some attraction for that ocean. Who knows what we were in our last life? You can be a fish. You can take the body of a fish. Consciousness is much, much more covered than a human being, obviously. And what can you achieve as a fish? But not much. But having been one fish, you can go up, maybe up in different fish. And finally you come out of the fish scale and you can come onto the land and plants and so forth. And eventually you can come into the animal species all the way up to human. Every soul gets a human body eventually. But the key is that how to use that human body to end this process of birth and death. That's the basic principle of the Vedic teachings. And there's all kinds of ways. It all revolves around the concept of yoga. Yoga, there's so many cognates in Sanskrit and English, some that are kind of obvious, practically identical, like Harinama, holy name, Nama. Matra is a word for mother, maternal. Mrityu is a word for death. Well, that's related by mortuary and mortal and all these words. So the idea of the transmigration of the soul is going on, and how can we become serious about ending that? Well, we have to hear about the advantage of doing that. Is that, first of all, we all know that we're going to die someday, but we don't like to think about it. That's something that we kind of like to in denial. And in fact, that's said to be the most amazing thing. The most amazing. Hanyahani bhutani gachanti yamaliyam sheshakstavanam ichanti kamaschayam atakparam. This is part of a pastime. Yudhishthira, who's one of the main protagonists in the Mahabharata, he's Arjuna's elder brother, and he's the son of Dharma personified, Dharmaraj. He's the son of Yamaraj. So very religious, very upstanding, very moral. And what happened was that they were exiled. They were the rightful heirs to the kingdom, but their uncle Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, and they thought, why? He was the oldest, Dhritarashtra, but Pandu got the kingdom because Dhritarashtra was born blind. He's not old. So then Pandu died. So Dhritarashtra was thinking, well, why not my sons? I was supposed to be the king, so my sons should get the kingdom. So that's the way the whole thing developed with the Mahabharata. This is part of the Mahabharata, this Bhagavad Gita. So Yudhishthira, what happened was they were exiled, cheated out of the kingdom by a gambling match. And so now they're in exile. They're wandering in the forest with the mother. Kunti is there. And so they're very thirsty. So Yudhishthira asked Bhima and Arjuna, to find some water. So they went out. Bhima went first, I think. And he found this nice pool, But when he was going to take some water and then try to get some back, he had some bag or something he could carry. But he heard a disembodied voice. This is my pond. It's actually Yamaraj. And you can't drink until you answer my questions. And Bhima says, forget that, So he took some more. Because he's very tough, Bhima's like scary. So, but immediately he fell down. There was something in the water. He was unconscious. So then Yudhishthira sent Arjuna out, and the same thing happened. So I don't know if he sent the twins out, but anyway, so he went out himself. And he comes to that, and he was religion personified. He would never lie, you know. Even Krishna told him to lie one time on the battle. He refused, but very, very upstanding. So when the disembodied voice came, which is actually the voice of his original father, which I don't think he recognized, he said, okay, I'll answer the questions. You have to answer questions. So there's a whole list of them, very interesting. And the most fascinating one is, what's the most amazing thing in this world? And Yudhishthira got it right. Ahanyahani bhutani gachanti himalayam. Ahanyahani means day after day. Day after day, so many thousands, and now it's probably several million people dying every day on this planet. And most of them, you know, especially at this age, they're not devotees, so they're being taken off to see Yamaraj. But the point is they're dying. And those who are left are not, you know, are living the life. They know that eventually they'll die, but they're living in such a way, they think, well, that's, you know, my grandfather died, and so he died, and so forth, but me, I'm not going to die. You know, of course, you know that you will, but you live as if you won't. That's the most amazing thing. But Krishna consciousness means to live really as if you may die at any moment, right? That's because you have some control about how you develop your consciousness, right? It's not, the point is, if you know that that's the science, that the most prominent thought that you have is going to determine your next life, then you're going to watch out what you're thinking about, right? And that's the whole idea in Krishna consciousness. So what is the punchline, so to speak? Well, we should take this seriously. But the point is how to have faith. How to have faith in you know, what I just told you, which is just straight from the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Without that faith, then you take it, oh, this is one more religion, or this is whatever, you know, and I'm going to go, you know, do what I was doing before, trying to make it in this material world, get a good job, get an education, try to, you know, avoid dangers, and try to be a good person, you know, in general. But that's not going to save you, because especially in today's world, I'm telling you, just in the Krishna consciousness movement, I joined it earlier, 50 years ago, 52 years ago. No cell phones, no TVs in the temple, no radios. Even to get a telephone, they had to encourage us, can you please call your mother at least once a month? You know, because like I felt I was on a spiritual planet, you know. So you'd have to line up to get to the one phone in the temple, you know. But now it's a different world. Everybody, you know, if you got that cell phone in your hand, you have the whole world is right there, you know. And that's often not the best thing to have when you're brahmachari, you know, trying to follow the 4 regs, and, you know, well, let me check out, you know, this scene, this site, you know. I remember this. There's one lady, I don't like to name names about these things, but in Alachua, we have a wonderful farm community in Florida, in northern Florida. There's 700 devotees there who live in and around that. And many of them are old Prabhupada disciples. They kind of retired there. But there's also, you know, a whole generation being brought up. People would come there because of the schools and settle in there so that they could have their kid in a Krishna conscious school. So there was a boys' school and there was a ladies' school in the Gurukul. And there was this one lady, you know who this is, Lakshmi Moni. You know, Lakshmi Moni, famous Lakshmi Moni. She was from Canada and she joined in New York, and she's very well known. And she was running the school with someone else, another senior devotee. And then one year I came there and the school had closed. And I don't know if I asked her that year, maybe it was the next year that I came, but I was asking, what happened? Why did you close the school? And she said, well, you know, we have the boys' school and we have the girls' school, right? And everything was going along all right. But then came the advent of smartphones. And once you have one girl has a smartphone, you know, they all have to have the smartphone. So they all have these smartphones. And you can, you know, in your bunk, you know, you can have a little conversation going on with so-and-so Das, who's in the boys' school. And she couldn't prevail on the mothers to try to enforce not having those phones for the girls, and that kind of undermined the school, and then she had to close the school. And so that's it. You know, aside from that, it's a whole different information world than when I grew up. When I grew up, we had 3 news stations, CBS, NBC, and ABC. You know, the TV, it was black and white. You may remember that, sir. And my parents were into the New York Times. We get it delivered every day, even though we lived on Long Island. And I got addicted to reading the New York Times, and I was 8 years old and everything. And that's, and this is what we're conscious of. But it's not like 100 different stations, and it's not like, some TikTok or whatever where you can, get it. It's a different information universe. So that's something that's really difficult to overcome if you want to be a bhakta, because you have to control what you're hearing and what you're reading, because that really is a large part of what you're thinking about. And that, if you're absorbed in the books of Srila Prabhupada, that's why he was so adamant of writing books. His spiritual master wanted to write books, and he wrote many volumes of books. The Bhagavatam itself is 18 volumes long. And Srila Prabhupada finished 10 of those volumes before he passed, and I helped to aid it a little bit in finishing the book. But there's so many, 20, 30 big books, books. And many books now the devotees have written also, which are very much worth reading. I remember when the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita came out, 6-volume biography of Srila Prabhupada. It took years and years to write, actually, by Satsvarupa Maharaj. Incredible stories. He had Nagaraj and Mahanidhi, who were they were both brahmacharis, and they would travel in India and find the places where Prabhupada had been and do some interviews, and it was amazing. So there's so much, and if you fill your mind with those words and ideas, then you become Krishna conscious by doing that, by hearing and repeating it. So that's what we're trying to do. Srila Prabhupada set up his mission here so that morning and evening classes, and I've been trying to keep the evening class alive since '89. How long is that? 35 years, 36 years. So that's going on. And now by the wonderful efforts of Tapas Prabhu, it's connected to the YouTube, internet, so there's maybe 10, 15, 20 more people listening. And of course, some devotees, Keshava Swami has millions of followers in India. They have millions. They're just giving the same thing. So that's the positive side of technology, but it can also be very dangerous. Okay, so any questions on this verse and purport? These two verses, 7 and 8, very important for understanding why and when Krishna appears. Thank you for coming. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on. And this next verse is also extremely important. This is Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatpataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mam eti sorjana. Now I'm going to add one word in here, which is missing. Hopefully I'm campaigning to have the word restored in the English translation. One who knows, in truth, the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. That word is from the Tattvataha, in truth. Purport. The Lord's descent from his transcendental abode is already explained in the 6th verse. One who can understand the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is already liberated from material bondage. I think maybe Prabhupada said in truth there, but anyway, you understand. And therefore he returns to the kingdom of God immediately after quitting this present material body. Such liberation of the living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. The impersonalists and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many, many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord, is only partial, and there is the risk of returning to this material world. But the devotee, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body, and does not run the risk of returning to this material world. In the Brahma Samhita 533, it is stated that the Lord has many, many forms and incarnations. Advaita Machita Manadi Mananta Rupam. Although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. As stated in the Vedas, Purusha Bhotani Upanishad, Eko Devo Nityalila Nurakto, Bhakta Vyapi Bhakta Ridyantaratma, the one Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. This Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Simply by accepting this truth on faith, one can, without a doubt, attain liberation. The Vedic version, Tattvam Asi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Krishna to be the Supreme, or who says unto the Lord, you are the same Supreme Brahman, the Personality of Godhead, is certainly liberated instantly, and consequently his entrance into the transcendental association of the Lord is guaranteed. Now this Tattvam Asi is a favorite of the Mayavadis, right? I mean, you are that. In other words, you are God, we are all God, we are all Supreme. That's not what it is supposed to be. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection, and this is confirmed by the following Vedic assertion. Tvameva vidadvaiti mrityumeti nanyak panta vidyate yanaya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there is no other way to achieve this perfection. Shvedashvatara Upanishad 3.8. That there is no alternative means that anyone who does not understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance, and consequently he will not attain salvation simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey or by interpreting the Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed-day mundane scholars have to wait for the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, and in this way attain perfection. So that faith, a very important verse comes to mind. How to cultivate the faith? Well, this is how. This is how. To meet together and hear and glorify the Lord, following the Acharya and the realized souls. There's a very important verse that's taught by Kapila Dev to his mother. In the 25th chapter of the 3rd canto. There are 8 verses, it just happens to be 8 verses, describing the importance of association with sadhus, commonly known as sadhu sangha. Isn't that what they do in Orlando? Sadhu sangha. Yeah. So this sadhu sangha, it probably, if you look it up in the English dictionary, I bet you'll find it by now. They like to absorb words. But it simply means association with sadhus. Now then the question is, who is a sadhu? So he's teaching his mother, and he says, Prasangam madanam pasham atmana kavayo vidu, sehesha sadhasya kato moksha dvaram apavatam. I put it into a little poem. Mundane affection keeps us tied to birth and death, infernal. But love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. This word prasanga. Now, pra is a very important prefix. It intensifies whatever has pra. So, sangha is association and also attachment. It's interesting. There's a whole bunch of words like that where the cause and the effect have the same word. The cause of attachment is association. If you don't associate with something or someone, how are you going to get attached? So, prasanga means intense association, producing very strong attachment. So here in this verse, he's describing the ordinary mentality of a human being in this world. Prasangam ajanam pasham, very strong ropes of attachment. You see? Prasangam ajanam. Atmana kaviyo vidu. So the kavis, the intelligent, know that the soul is very much attached to the things and people of this world. So that very same attachment, when directed toward the sadhus, opens wide the doors to life eternal. In other words, to liberation. Because the sadhu will give you, it's like probably would use the word via medium, when he really just meant medium. It's like a pure medium. They still use that word channeling? I don't know if they did channeling. An open channel from Krishna to us. That's what the pure devotees are. So if you're fortunate enough to associate with such a person, and that means to really become attached and to hear very submissively, then you can change your own attachments. So I'll just go through, because this is really an important section. Third canto, 25th chapter, starting verse 20 through 27, that's 8 verses, is very important, essential instructions for our bhakti life. So, understanding that and believing it, that very same attachment needs to be, then the next one, well, who's the sadhu? How can I recognize the sadhu? So then he has a key verse there, and this is the second most famous verse of these 8. Tatikshaba, karunika, suridak sarvadehinam, ajata shatravak shanta, sadhavak sadhubhushina. Here are the ornaments of a sadhu. Here's how you recognize a sadhu. First of all, very tolerant. Think of Prahlad. Prahlad is a perfect example. Tolerant. Prabhupada was so tolerant also. They all have to be tolerant. Bhaktisiddhanta, there's so much going on in his movement, his Gaudiya Vaishnava, Gaudiya Gamat. So they tolerate in all ways. Not just tolerance means that you can stand some pain, but also emotionally and philosophically and everything, be tolerant. So Tatikshava Karunika, if you're going to try to spread Krishna consciousness or God consciousness in general, probably give the example of Jesus Christ, then you're impelled by mercy, Karunika. But then when you try to do it, you get so much opposition, you have to be tolerant, right? Tatikshava Karunika, Sudidak Sarvadehinam, to see not just every human being, but every embodied living being, you're the friend. And this is where, vegetarianism comes in, not the slaughterhouse, all of this thing. Realizing these are souls, just like embodied souls, and especially the cows, which can give us so much service, and so ajata shatravak, and having no enmity toward anyone, even your enemies. They have enmity to you, you don't return it with enmity. Ajata shatravak, and because of all this shanta, they're very peaceful. Sadhavak, sadhubhushana, these are the ornaments of a sadhu, the character. So it really means the bhakta. The only one that can be the devotees of these sadhus, So then it goes on, and he says, and then, I have to review these verses, I keep saying that. So basically he's saying there that, how do you get to be a sadhu? Because that verse doesn't even mention bhakti. So he says, Mayananyena bhavena bhakti kurvanti hedvidam matkrute chakta karmanas chakta swajana bandhava. So this is Kapila Dev speaking as an incarnation. He's an incarnation of Krishna. Mayananyena bhavena bhaktim, to rendering unalloyed devotional service to me, he says, to Krishna. That's how you become a sadhu. Mayam bhavina bhaktim kurvanti vidham, with great determination. And what's the symptom of that? He gives 2 things. Matkrute tyakta karmanas, for my sake, giving up any activity that's not in the realm of bhakti, you see. And matkrute tyakta swajana bandhavana. And if there are impediments to your devotion, then also detaching yourself from friends and family and everything like that. That's a symptom. Very difficult. So then what happens? So he says to his mother, so now you try to associate with such sadhus, and their association will negate all of the bad results of your previous bad association. This is sangha dosha, the faults coming from bad association. That's in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. Niyamana moha jita sangha dosha adyatna navan vinavita kama. Probably refers to that verse in the purport in the Bhagavatam. So then comes the key verse in all of the 8. Satam prasangan mama virya sambido bhavanti ritkana rasayana katha tadjoshanada svabavarga vartmani shraddha rati bhaktu anukramisiti. So this is where the shraddha comes. For shraddha is faith. So satam prasangan, by associating with such sadhus, and here don't notice the word prasanga comes in again. The first word was prasanga. So meaningful association. You don't just come in, visit. You actually hear and you engage. So that's prasanga. Mama virya samvido. What's going to happen? You're going to hear accounts of my powerful activities and glories. Mama virya samvido. Bhavanti, which are ritkana rasayana, a life-giving elixir, rasayana, for the ears and for the mind and the heart. Rasayana kata. And by employing this principle, which is what this is basically. I'm not much of a sadhu, but I'm the closest we got at this point, at this time. So, Tadjoshanad, employing this path, Ashu, quickly, Apavarga Vartmani. Did you remember last night? I don't know if you were here Sunday night with Nirantra. He brought up the word Apavarga and he let me define it. So Apavarga is the path of liberation. Then what develops? Shraddha, Ratir, Bhaktir, Anukramishati. You increase your faith, your attraction for Krishna, and not only your bhakti, your love for God. This is the main way in which you do it. And the essence of the sadhu sangha is sankirtan, congregational chanting. I chant, you hear, you chant, I hear. In this way we're enlivening each other. And that's what this whole sadhu sangha is all about. So that's the whole essence of it. Because the more that you have faith, the more you want to hear. And you find that your material desires are evaporating just like dew in the morning, And the idea, we have example, this, I keep saying it's quoted twice in the book, but it's verse from Yamunacharya. Yadabadi mamacheta Krishna pada vinde nabanamana sadhaman yuditam rantam asit. Tadabadi badanadi sangame, again it's the sangame again. Sangame smayamane, bhavati mukhavikaru system, nistivanancha. So there's a whole backstory. He was so smart as a young man. He was like 11 years old or something, and he challenged the court pundit of the king to a debate. And everybody said, "This is crazy," And the king was saying, "Look, if you can outsmart my court pundit, you can have half my kingdom." So I got to do some research to find out these questions. They're such clever questions, And the court pundit he couldn't answer them. So he won the debate, got half the kingdom, but then he lost touch with his. He was in the Gurukul. He was in an ashram. So it went on like that. He did what kings do, and then one day an old friend came from the ashram to visit him and said, "Oh, Prabhu, the big." And so he invited Yamunacharya invited him, or he invited him to go for a walk in his gardens. He had these beautiful gardens. So he was walking out there, and he started reminding him of all these old nectar shlokas, that they learned back in the Gurukul, And Yamunacharya was all enlivened by that, and so he just kept walking. They walked right out of the kingdom. He gave it up. And then eventually he wrote this verse, which means, Yadavadi mamacheta Krishna pada vinde namanamana sadhaman yudidam rantamasid. Ever since I have experienced the moment-to-moment pleasure of serving the lotus feet of Nanda Nandana, Krishna, the son of Nanda, I've been tasting that. Then whenever it comes to mind, it bubbles up, remembrances of some experience I've had as a king with my harem, he says that he doesn't want to think about it, and he turns, his lips turn with distaste, and he spits. Prabhupada would say very charmingly, he spit at it. He spit at it, spitting. So that just think about that, how you can become not just detached, but really averse to things that at one point were so attractive to you. And we found that even, so many of my god brothers, god sisters were able to come out of that 60s era, when there was this, hey, if it feels good, let's do it. And that's that's suicide spiritually, But they were able, they became attracted by Prabhupada and the chanting and everything, and many were able to just give that up. They were able to withstand the allures of drugs and the LSD and all the free sex and all that stuff. So that's really human life, and the power of this process, and the power of Krishna to attract. He's all attractive. If you allow yourself to be attracted by chanting the holy name with great attention and seeing the deity, and then you find that just overwhelms all the material attraction. You can see that it just can't hold a candle to it. Who can hold a candle to Krishna? You know. So anyway, that's so here he's saying, he's giving a very nice benediction here. If one can understand my birth and activities in truth, veti tattvataha, then when you give up this body, you come back to God, you come back to me. Now, understanding those pastimes is not so easy. They're very mysterious. But we have an opportunity to do that. Prabhupada gave us the Krishna book. Now we have the 10th canon, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the sweet passage. We also have the Chaitanya Bhagavat. That's also there. And so we have a great opportunity to understand Krishna's birth and activities, divine birth and activities in truth, and then giving up this body will go to Him. We won't come back again, trying to enjoy this world. Okay, we have a little time for poems, unless there is burning questions. Anything? Sarah has taken a whole notebook full of questions.
It's a verse from one spiritual master teaching another spiritual master with a question, which seems kind of appropriate. Oh, thank you. On the nature of birth and death.
Uh-huh.
So let me look this up. Okay. All right, it's 3 verses, and the question is within. Jesus answered, saying to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, if a man is not born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." Nicodemus said to him, "How can an old man be born again? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born?" Jesus answered, saying to him, "Truly, I say to you, if a man is not born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. What is born of flesh is flesh, and what is born of the Spirit is spirit." Can you please give your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the process of devotional service that we do, bhakti yoga, which is by definition, it's a process of reawakening our love for God, which is always there but is now covered. And so that idea of yoga, which as I mentioned, means connection. We're always connected to things, but we want to renew that connection. So the rebirth, it's kind of like that's when you practice Krishna consciousness seriously and you develop a relation with a spiritual master, you want to take initiation. And it's important when you take initiation that you get a new name, because you have a different identity. And that, in that sense, there is this idea of being reborn, reborn, a new life that you're getting. It doesn't necessarily mean a change of body. Now, that change of body is going to take place anyway. We're hoping that we will be reborn in our original, what is called sarup, siddhi, our perfect original form and nature and consciousness, which we lost when we came down here. We turned our back on God and turned our back on Krishna. And so we've been living this false life with false ideas of who we are and what's important and pleasurable. So that idea of being reborn is there in our philosophy also. But literally speaking, whether you're realized or not, you're going to be reborn. You're going to be reborn in another material body if you don't get a spiritual body.
That's kind of right. And where the spirit, what is born of flesh is flesh, and what is born of the spirit is spirit. I was reading that there's the super soul, the spirit soul, and the spirit whole. So what is born of flesh, right, goes back to flesh, and what is born of spirit is spirit. So from what you're saying, and kind of from what my understanding was, and I wanted to get your perspective on this, our spirit goes back into spirit, and our body, of course, is just a dress, a material concept.
Yeah, the body is gone.
So when you go to spirit whole, what's the ultimate reality that you want to attain? And if you go to spirit whole, do you come back, or?
Well, that's the idea. You don't come back. The last verse we read if one understands, knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities in truth, does not, upon leaving the body, the physical body, take his birth again in this material world,
Right.
but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. And it's understood from other places that you get a spiritual body there, your eternal form, the original form.
So what's spirit whole?
The spirit whole, I'm not sure what that means. The spirit whole, what that?
WHOLE, like the spirit whole.
Yeah, you know, the whole,
Okay, okay,
WHOLE,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, well, all I can think of is that you're kind of made whole again. You know, we've lost our actual nature. It's buried. But when it's brought out again by cultivation of Krishna consciousness, let me just go back to the Sanskrit, because so much depends on that. There's this idea of liberation from birth and death, obviously, mukti.
Right, okay.
But mukti is kind of a negative idea. It means that liberation from something. But what are you liberated to, so to speak? And that definition is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2nd canto. The word is mukti. Mukti means liberation. Mukti hitva anyata rupam swarupena vivastati. So real mukti doesn't mean just getting free and merging into Brahman, merging into the pure spirit. See, there's different conceptions of the Absolute. There's Brahman, which is just the pure white light of spirit. There's no differentiation. There's no separate bodies or anything.
Thank you.
See?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one conception. But we don't aspire for that, because that's not who we are. We are persons. We're eternal persons. So so eventually you get restless up there. I compare it to sensory deprivation chambers.
Right, yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
We kind of have, yeah, same.
Yeah,
similar concept.
that's,
like then
that's
you
cool
get
for
bored
a while.
And you come back down.
You come
if you're
back
not,
down,
right.
and yeah. So we want to attain our original form, and that's in the spiritual world with all the other spirit souls who are in their perfect spiritual bodies, and others return to Goloka Vrindavan where we left. And so mukti hitva anyata rupam, giving up our other forms. Just like in this one body, we've had so many different bodies, right? The baby body, child body, adolescent body, right? And then you get the old body, and eventually that body is gone, you see? But so we're transmigrating as it goes. Time is running out. All right, so we want to be in our swarup, our actual rupa, that is our eternal rupa, and be reinstated there. And that, in a sense, is being reborn in our original form.
Is that like the Garden of Eden?
Yes, the Garden of Eden,
Okay.
but we call it Goloka Vrindavan.
Okay, all right, wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so we have 1 minute, real short one. Okay, yeah. A wretched mind just worships Shri Radha Krishna Chandra and dive into an ocean full of endless bliss and wonder. I give it, you can have it for free. You can make a t-shirt out of it. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. We'll resume tomorrow. Thank you for attending. And thank you for the online participants.